Hello. It's been a little while since I've made a video. I'm getting some questions by several people, and I've tried to cover this, but apparently I need to kind of go over it again and maybe make some more details. Between the two hands, that's just one metaphor. It's basically the kingdom of God on earth is divided up. Basically, it's two, like the United States government. The federal government of the United States has three branches of government, right? There's the judicial, the legislative, and the executive. Well, in the kingdom of God, there's no legislative branch because God is the legislator, and all the laws are written by Yahuwah, and we're not allowed to change his laws, add to them, or take away from them. We just have to learn them in their proper context and intent and implement them, keep them, preserve them, teach them, and spread them. Okay? So there's no legislative branch. But we kind of have, we could say one side is the executive branch and one side is the judicial branch. That's these two hands. Now, in reality, what the United States has done is divided up the right hand into two, because it's not that follow the kingdom at all. But in the kingdom, there's basically two branches of the kingdom government, right? Because God is supposed to reign from his throne in heaven over humanity, over his people. We don't need an earthly king. We don't need an earthly God, a sovereign power, a mighty authority, a ruling judge to reign over us. The Creator is reigning in our hearts and minds from his throne in the third heaven, wherever that is outside of our known space and dimensions, right? We don't go there. Can't go there. And we're not going to go there except for those, the Son of Man who came down from there. So it says no man goes to heaven except for the Son of Man who came down from heaven. So we don't go there. We just die, then we're resurrected, and we're going to be here on this earth or on the new heaven and new earth, right? So this kingdom government on earth, where the ultimate authority is who you pledge your allegiance to, put your faith in, fidelity and allegiance, and your worship, your homage, your obedience, and who you've taken vows to, just like if you were going to pledge allegiance to the United States or to the state of France or the state of Great Britain or the state of Germany or the state of Japan or whatever. If you're going to be a subject of that sovereign authority, then you're going to take vows of allegiance and other vows as well to those sovereigns, right? And then you become a subject of that sovereign. Now you must obey the laws of that sovereign because you pledged allegiance and you're paying the tributes to that sovereign in the form of excise taxes, that sort of thing. So, this idea of coming out, I think, confuses a lot of people. I've tried to tell people, look, it's too late for most of you to come out now, voluntarily beforehand. What you're really looking to do now is you're looking to recognize when the mark of the beast becomes permanent and mandatory and you're cast out. Because if you choose now, it's not like it was for the first Exodus out of Egypt. There we had a very clear release from the civil law god, Pharaoh. Pharaoh, he's the superior party to the contract they entered into in Genesis, I think it's 47, where it said, all that Pharaoh says and do, we shall do and obey. And they gave their voluntary consent to become subjects of Pharaoh in the Egyptian system, basically naturalized, aliens, resident aliens, if you will, that became, and of course they were there for 400 years, so they're basically becoming Egyptian citizens. But originally, when Joseph got them to consent, now they're naturalized as resident aliens in Goshen, and then over time, their children are born in Egypt and they're Egyptian. and then they come out. But in that coming out, there's a catastrophe, right? There's all these plagues that Yahuwah is bringing down upon Egypt. And then the last plague, the death of the firstborn, Pharaoh, the god of Egypt, says, hey, look, you want to go out? Go, get. So there was the release. But in what's coming, in this greater exodus that Jeremiah talks about, there's not going to be that kind of release. It's going to be, you're either going to choose to stay into our system and take this mark, the beast, the mark of the beast, and everything will be fine. You just stay a civilian now, which identifies you to Yahuwah as, whoa, a tear, weed, whatever, marked for destruction. Or you're not going to take that mark, and you're going to be cast out. You'll have to leave. You're not going to be able to go into Walmart. You're not going to have employment anymore. You're not, by you not taking that mark, you're going to surrender all of the privileges and immunities and franchises and benefits and licenses and all that you've been getting as a subject citizen under vows to this foreign and alien God called the United States or France or Germany or Russia or whatever. Okay? So what should you be doing right now? I keep trying to tell people, what you need to be doing is trying to become the chaste bride. How do you do that? You got to keep his laws. That's what he's talking about. A chaste bride, this wife, is Israel keeping the laws of Yahuwah, doing their best to do that, to show that they are these wise virgins, this chaste bride, the prodigal son that returns, the repentance, the real repentance, not just depending on magic words. Okay? So now who's forming this kingdom government of these two branches of the kingdom now? Well, those that have come out already beforehand, they are now in a position to take new vows to a new God, because they've separated, their old man has died, their civilian person has died, they're no longer connected, they're in the civil world, living among it, but they're not possessed by it as a corporate member. So now they're going to take vows, just like a U.S. citizen pledges allegiance to Uncle Sam and his state, a qualified allegiance to his state, to obey the laws of the state, and to obey the laws of the United States. And you're going to be a trustee of that Sestiki global, public religious trust of the United States called the Federal Reserve and the U.S. Department of Treasury. Okay? So your vow of poverty, and if you've watched the other videos, hey, do you go back to that first one, did you make the state your father? And then I think I talk about ownership of property. So what these people that can come out now voluntarily with that, they're going to take a vow of poverty. What does that mean? It doesn't mean you live in abject poverty. It means you own nothing, of no personal estate in allodium. This is the same as a U.S. citizen. You're under a vow of poverty in the United States because you don't own anything outright in an allodial freehold. You have a mere legal title to possess and use the state and federal government and the central bank's property, and your use and possession of that must be in accordance with the laws of that sovereign, that God, in order for you to retain ownership of that property, legal title to that property. Ask yourself this: if you really owned it, stop paying your property taxes or burn your house down, and you'll find out who really owns that property. You have a mere legal title because you have no real personal estate as a freehold, allodial, freeman, homo liber. So U.S. citizens are under a vow of poverty. Vow of chastity. U.S. citizens do not have to take this vow, but in the kingdom, the apostles and the Levites, the separate government bureaucrats who are this left hand of public service to all foreigners and strangers and the Israelites, the right hands of Israel, they are under a vow of chastity. What does that mean? They only have one husband. Who is that? Yeshua. They can't have any other husband. They can't have dual citizenship. U.S. citizens, over here that are right hands that are still U.S. citizens, they can have dual citizenship. They're not under a vow of chastity. A vow of faith. Faith is fidelity and allegiance. All civilians are under a vow of allegiance. You've pledged allegiance to your sovereign power, so you're under a vow of faith to a foreign and alien God. You're also under a vow of obedience, which is homage, worship. Obedience is keeping all the laws. For civilians, that's keeping the civil laws that apply to you of the United States or the state or, whatever, wherever you're at as a civilian member of a corporate body politic. You are also under a vow of obedience. But because these have come out, basically expatriated, died from being a U.S. citizen or a German or whatever, and now they've pledged allegiance to a foreign and alien sovereign called YHWH, whose king is Yeshua. That government has a king called Yeshua. They've pledged chastity to that one king, that one husband. They are now holding all property, just like over here, the civilians are holding property of the United States for the benefit of the state, United States, and central bank. Well, over here, who are these guys, people? I want to just imply, men. Who males? Who's holding this? Who are they holding this property for? Who, this vow of poverty where they can have possession and use, but who's the sovereign that tells them how they have to use this property? Boop. The laws of God tell them how to do it, and they're using it for Yeshua's purposes. What was his prime directive to his ministers, to his apostles? Feed my sheep. That's both the right hands, that's those that don't have a family. The left hands deal with the government side of things that deals with charity. They take the free will offerings of the right hands, they use them for Christ's purposes, for the welfare of the people, and specifically their first duty before even serving the right hands, because they're supposed to take care of their own families. Their first duty is to widows and orphans, those that don't have a family. Then they also help these people when these families get in over their head. So that's what Levites and apostles, that's the church specific. Go look at my videos on what the church really is. It has a general meaning, which is the whole body of Messiah, which is the combination of the right hands and the left hands. But there's also the definition of the church specific, which just applies to Levites, apostles, basically government bureaucrats, which are full-time ministers. Just like in your civil system, does everybody in the United States, all U.S. citizens, work for the state, county, local, or federal government as an actual government bureaucrat? No. Most of the people in the body politic called the United States, most of those people are right hands. They're working for IBM and Texaco and your local grocery store and the electrician and whatever. They're not working in your county government offices, your city government offices, your state government offices, or your federal government offices. That's what these left hands are doing. They're your government bureaucrats that you've called out. They must come out by separating themselves from the world, and you call them out as an actual apostle or Levite because you're entrusting them with what you're giving to Yeshua and Yahuwah to bring meat into his house, into his storehouse, like in Malachi 3. And we're going to look at that. So, again, the left hands, they use what's given to Yahuwah by the right hands for kingdom government purposes. Principally, where do they start? Taking care of widows and orphans. Then where do they go? Taking care of right hands in need. So when the right hand wants to come out, right hands have a hard time coming out because right now there's very little of this. This left hand is almost non-existent because everybody's still over here. Well, you know, if you were wanting to immigrate to, let's say you were, Ukrainian, and you wanted to come to the United States, and if you got here, there wasn't any government as in government bureaucrats, United States left hands, the Department of, Health and Human Services, Department of Immigration and Naturalization, there wasn't any of that. What would you do? It's like, well, I don't know what to do. There's nothing for me to come to. I don't know, I become an American. Well, that's what your problem is. Everybody wants to come out over here and come into the kingdom, but they're not understanding you've got to have this little flock of government bureaucrats that are under these vows to create the asylum state. That's what those videos about the asylum state are about. And how do they get stuff to create the asylum state to help you when you want to come out? You've got to give it to them. Why are you entrusting them? Because if you as a civilian just give it to another civilian, is it leaving the trust of Satan, the adversarial sestiki public religious trust of the civil law world, which Satan has absolute dominion over, right? Yeshua didn't challenge him on that out in the desert. When he said, hey, you worship me, I'll let you rule over all these kingdoms of earth. Yeshua didn't say, well, you don't have dominion over these kingdoms. I rule them now. No. Satan has dominion over the United States, the Great Britain, EU, Russia, France, Brazil, whatever. Every civil law united nation out there on planet Earth is under Satan's dominion. So every Department of Treasury, every central bank, everything that you're doing over here, when you give to one U.S. citizen to another U.S. citizen, or if you give, now it does transfer a little bit. If you were to give, a U.S. citizen were to give something to, say, a French national, a U.S. national gives to a French national, it comes out of the U.S. public religious trust of the central bank and U.S. Treasury and state and goes into the French. But has that left Satan's dominion? Absolutely not. You have to move it out of the jurisdictional realm of Satan over here to the kingdom. How are these people doing? How are they holding that property separate? Because they've actually come out. They have absolutely no legal connections to the civil systems. They've taken these vows to a foreign and alien god called Yahuwah, foreign and alien to these civil systems. Now, here's what's also important. These right hands, not all of them can come out. Remember, it's too late for you to probably come out now. There might be a few of you that can do this, but you've got to find these people that have already done this. Okay? Because what you need to do now, and we're going to look at Malachi 3, like I say here, you don't have to come out until the mark is made. Mandatory. That's when you've got to be cast out and you better be ready to leave. But when you get ready to leave, is there anything for you to be an asylum state for you to get out of that's going to be able to feed you, clothe you, and shelter you as you come out during this tribulation? If you haven't been given to it, establishing yourself as part of this kingdom, what do these guys have to give you? Nothing. Your stubborn, selfish heart, you've just been keeping everything over here in this trust. Well, one, you erroneously think you own it. So you're selfishly hanging on to it, not realizing that the state and central bank own it. One of your jobs as a right hand is to rob that trust. Now, I'm not talking about illegally. I've got a little note here, legally. The right hands rob the civil law public religious trusts of the property they freely gave into that trust as citizens, because you're a mere trustee over property too, just like these guys are. They're just holding property for a different sovereign. Over here it's the civil sovereign. So now, just like I said, if you want a U.S. national give something to a French national, it does transfer from the civil law trust of the U.S. to the civil law trust of France, but that doesn't leave Satan's dominion. You got to transfer stuff from the civil law system over into Yahuwah's kingdom. This is what he's talking about in Malachi 3. Let me pull this up. Set this down here for a minute. Let's get a little closer. I'm going to drop down here. It says, have you robbed God? Will a man rob God, Yahuwah? Yet ye have robbed me. But ye say, wherein have we robbed thee? In tithes and offerings. Have you been tithing to a Levitical, an actual called out separate priest or minister, apostle, Levite of the kingdom? Or have you been giving your offerings and tithes to God through a state incorporated 501c3 licensed minister of the state? Huh? Did that leave the trust of the world, or is that still firmly within Satan's jurisdictional grasp? So have you been robbing Yahuwah while you've been giving him lip service, thinking you've been given to Yahuwah? That's what he's talking about here. Will a man rob God? And ye have robbed me. But you say, wherein have we robbed you? We're going to church on Sunday. We're going to synagogue on Saturday. We're giving offerings, tithes and offerings. How have we robbed you? It's still in the civil law trust, fool. Ye are cursed with a curse, for ye have robbed me, even this whole nation. Bring ye all the tithes into the storehouse, that there may be meat in my house. Who's he going to feed with that meat? You. Freely. Feed my sheep. And prove me that herewith, saith Yahuwah of hosts, I will not open the windows of heaven and pour out a blessing, that there shall be room enough to receive it. Shall not be room enough to receive it. Like, wait a minute, that doesn't sound right. Okay? So, the problem is people aren't doing what Yahuwah has told them to do. Now, granted, you're just getting this information. If you're watching this playlist, this is probably the first time, and I highly encourage everybody to watch this playlist in order. You've probably never heard this information. And most people didn't even wake up to this until the Ezekiel prophecies in Ezekiel chapter 4 were fulfilled, which for most Israelites, Christians, prodigal sons, we're talking 2009 before the scales were removed from their eyes and they could start to see this, because they were still under the curse of the sin of the prophecy for their punishment for non-repentance. And then he says, when you start doing this, when you start robbing the temples of the world and giving it back to Yahuwah into his kingdom for real, not just, writing a check out to a state licensed, state incorporated, non-profit tax exempt organization calling itself a church. What a load of crap. I will rebuke the devourer for your sake. Ooh, that's going to be important during the tribulation, man. And he shall not destroy the fruits of your ground, neither shall your vine cast her fruit before the time in the field, saith Yahuwah of hosts. I don't know if you've ever grown grapes. I have. Man, oh man, oh man. Those grapes will start dropping because of insects and all kinds of stuff that's beyond your control. And all nations shall call you blessed, for ye shall be a delightsome land, saith Yahuwah of hosts. And then he goes on to say, your words have been stout against me, saith Yahuwah. Yet ye say, what have we spoken so much against thee? You have said, it is vain to serve Yahuwah. Who is it that you're really serving, right hand? What gods are you really bound to with your social security number and your subject citizenship and your licenses and your birth certificates and all this stuff that you're doing over here? And you're claiming to love Yahuwah. You're claiming that you want to be a right hand, but you're not doing a damn thing right hands are supposed to do. You're just giving him lip service. So he said, it is vain to serve God, and what profit is it that we have kept his ordinance, that we have walked mournfully before Yahuwah of hosts? And here's the question: what ordinances, what commandments, what statutes, what laws of Yahuwah have Christians been keeping? None of them, not one. They don't keep the 10. They don't keep any of them. They don't keep the two. The greatest commandments aren't even part of the 10 commandments. They're somewhere else. Leviticus 19:18 and Deuteronomy 6:5. Not part of the 10. But they don't even keep the 10. They say all that law's been done away with. We don't have to keep any of that. And now we call the proud happy. Yea, they that work wickedness are set up. How many of your leaders are you bitching, moaning, and complaining about because of their wickedness, their corruption, and they're set up and you're sick and tired of it? They're doing exactly what you're doing. And you're bitching and moaning, complaining about what they're doing, and Yahuwah's trying to tell you here, you're no different. You're on a smaller scale. These guys are up there in the big boys. They're playing, they're in the NFL while you're down here playing, Pop Warner football. But you're doing the same stuff. They that tempt God are even delivered. How many times I've heard people bitch about that? Yeah, because the only reward they're getting is this earthly reward of what they're corruptly getting through their wickedness, through the civil system of satanic worship. Then they that feared Yahuwah spake often one to another, and Yahuwah hearkened and heard it, and a book of remembrance was written before him. All throughout time, people have repented. A small little flock has always been here. But it's just a remnant. Well, now it's getting ready to, this whole bride thing, this whole thing is coming to an end, and you're going to have to come out. And there's a bunch of left hands out here like myself, and you're going to come looking for us, and we're not prepared to help you because you have not done your job as right hands. Was written before him, and they that feared Yahuwah and that thought upon his name, that means character. And they shall be mine, saith Yahuwah of hosts, in that day when I make up my jewels, and I will spare them as a man spareth his own son that serveth him. Serveth him! Then shall ye return and discern between the righteous and the wicked, between him that serveth God and him that serveth him not. So, what are you needing to do? You need to start finding your local left hand, somebody that's already done this. If you can't find anybody that's already done this, find somebody who can do this and support them. Because who are they going to turn around and support? You. Now, this side of government, remember, this side has to do with charity, helping people, welfare, the health, education, and welfare of the people. This side does not deal with the Mixtum and the Merum. The right hands, even if you're bound up in the world, you're going to start doing what Yahuwah wanted you to do. That proves by your fruit that you're his, even though you're contractually still bound. Okay? Don't worry about that. You got to start bearing good fruit. That's what's important. How do you do that? You got to start behaving as a righteous right hand. The right hands are the IMPERIUM. This is what Rome used to call it. But this is what the right hands do in the kingdom. They're the Mixtum and the Merum. So the way you kind of think about that is, one is domestic justice, the other one is foreign protection. So the right hands are basically dual purpose. They're being the militia, i.e. repelling foreign invasion. They're kind of like law enforcement, okay? And they're also the posse comitatus that operates within the body. So they're helping to repel foreigners, but they're also they're the ones. Now think, not I'm not talking about the civil system. This is for the kingdom, right? You got to be thinking. You got to be a right hand for the kingdom. So who, as a militia here, who are you trying to protect? All these families, but also this left hand. Okay? Both of these have to recognize each other. The left hand goes, here's the sheep I'm feeding. The right hand says, here's my ministers who are helping me when I get in trouble. I must protect them. They must protect me. These are the wings. Remember the two hands, they're connected to two arms. Who are the wings of God's kingdom? The right wing protects the left wing. You're coming under the wings of Yahuwah's protection. Here it is. Okay? So the right hand's for the kingdom now. Think of it in a civil system. These would be kind of like your Department of Justice, the military, your law enforcement. Again, militia and posse. But they're also providing protection, but they're also serving as judges. They're the ones that enforce, when you there's all kinds of references in the scripture about taking your complaints to the judges who are sitting at the gates. Who's that? The elders of your community, your white hairs in the Witten of the Anglo-Saxons. This kind of system has been created over and over because it's Yahuwah's kingdom. Okay, so what else do you have to do? In this time, before Messiah returns, we've got a job to protect. We got to make sure that there's something built up in Yahuwah's storehouse, so that when people come out or they're cast out, they're not going to starve to death. They can tabernacle with Yahuwah through the tribulation, because they've kind of already legally robbed the civil law public trust of what they can, and brought over here and filled up Yahuwah's storehouse, so that these ministers over here, this left hand, can provide the welfare that the people need when they come out. So what you're doing is you're taking the property that you freely gave into that trust, and you're taking it back out, and you're giving it jurisdictionally across a jurisdictional boundary line over here to Yahuwah, and you're filling up his storehouse. So you're giving it back to Yahuwah for real, not just some state-created public entity called a church. You're giving it to his body, Israel, which is often called the church, but it really means the ekklessia, the congregation, the called out body. Just like, think of it too, like in the New Testament. This is what Ananias and Sapphira were trying to do. They were trying to do this transfer of being right hands to coming over here and being a left hand. So they sold their property. Instead of giving their property over so that it could be used as literal ground, holy ground, they decided to sell their personal estate and then bring the money to lay it on the altar. Remember, you're under a vow of poverty if you're crossing over. What did they try to do? They tried to keep some personal estate. That barred them from becoming this left hand, and they died. They died to be in this left hand. Now, I don't know if they literally died. It kind of sounds that way because they were really being unrighteous. But whether they literally died or whether they died to this system, they could no longer participate in this system and were cast out into outer darkness. That means they were stuck being a civilian and marked. Remember, what you bind on earth is bound in heaven, and what you loose on earth is loosed in heaven. But how do we decide? The law of God. It's how we execute the judgments of the law of God. Are we righteously judging? So you're giving it back to Yahuwah, And their first duty, like these guys' first duty, is to widows and orphans because they don't have a family. This body becomes their family. But remember, their second duty is to feed all the sheep, which includes these people with families. But this is kind of the other side of it. Their first duty, the right hands, the patriarchs and matriarchs of families, their first duty is to their family. And then to the other families in their local congregation of tens. And then following that pattern, their duty is to help the congregations of hundreds and thousands of families. How do they do that? Through charitable giving, through this. Okay? But both left and right hands in the kingdom are priests. It says it's a nation of priests. And what do I mean? Because you're fulfilling duties that kind of cross this jurisdictional boundary between these two hands. See, that's why I wrote this, the blending of the two hands, the kingdom government as a whole. Let's say that there was a tornado somewhere and a bunch of these families in a local congregation, or even in a pattern of hundreds in maybe, say, Missouri or something, Texas, had a big bad storm. We got a bunch of people that are actually striving to be right hands, and we've got some left hands out here that are doing all this. Well, who's going to come and help them rebuild? These guys are. They're going to bring the stuff that they've been given and come down to Texas, like FEMA. Now these guys are serving as FEMA, the charity of the welfare of the people, making these people that suffered from the tornado whole again. But are they going to be able to do it alone? No, they're going to send out to their congregations the call for a bunch of right hands to be commissioned by them to come with them to Texas to help these families directly affected. So it's a whole nation of priests serving each other, but one is a right hand whose primary duty is the Merum and Mixtum and being serving families. The other one is strictly the left hand of charity, welfare of all the people. And together, they make up this whole body. So these two hands make up the whole kingdom. They're just two different hands or two different departments of the government, two different branches of the kingdom government with different priorities or jobs that they're focused on doing as ministers or priests for Yahuwah. Okay? I hope that starts to clear things up a little bit. And I want to end this video with some citations here to kind of help. Whoops, wasn't quite fast enough. Matthew 7:21. Not everyone that saith unto me, Lord, Lord, Master, Master, shall enter into the kingdom of heaven. Boy, that ought to scare the living daylights out of a lot of Christians. That ought to perk your ears. It did me. Not everyone how many Christians are running around saying, Jesus' name shall enter into the kingdom of heaven. They all believe they're going to the kingdom of heaven. But he that doeth the will of my Father which is in heaven. What is the will of Yahuwah? His word, his Torah, his instructions. I see all these people doing foolish things. What is the will of God for my life? Like he's writing a specific will for you. His will is the same for all of us. It's to keep his commandments, all of them that apply to you. Are you a left hand? Certain laws apply to you. Are you a right hand? Certain laws apply to you that doesn't apply to others. Are you a female? Certain laws apply to you that don't apply to males. So on and so forth. Not every law of every government applies to everybody across the board equally. Same for civil systems. Many will say to me in that day, Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied in your name, and in thy name have cast out devils, and in thy name done many wonderful works? Haven't we been helping people, and haven't we been doing this, and traveling around here, and ministering here, and doing this? And it's all been under the banner of the civil law state and the adversarial satanic system of civil law. And they don't understand that. And then he goes on to say, because they're still civilian, they're not bringing anything into his storehouse, they're not really doing anything for his kingdom, because they're civilians serving a foreign and alien god, then I will profess unto them, I never knew you. You're sitting here saying, Jesus, Jesus, depart from me, ye that work iniquity. That word iniquity there is lawlessness. You're without the Torah. You're not keeping my laws, because if you were, you'd actually be doing works for the kingdom. But you're not. You're doing them for a foreign and alien god. Therefore, whoever heareth these sayings of mine and doeth them, I will liken him unto a wise man which built his house upon a rock. Carry on. Afterward, he came also this is the story about the virgins, right? Who are these wise virgins and who are the foolish virgins? Then shall the kingdom of heaven be likened unto 10 virgins, which took their lamps and went forth to meet the bridegroom, and 5 of them were wise, and 5 were foolish. How can a virgin? Think about that for a minute. So virgin is somebody who hasn't adulterated themselves, had sex with somebody else. That's adultery. So these are people that are, only pledged allegiance to Yahuwah or Yeshua. Right? Just like 14th Amendment citizens that have never expatriated or whatever, only have ever given their wedding vows to Uncle Sam. Those trustees of Uncle Sam's Trust, those wise virgins of the U.S. 14th Amendment citizens. Okay, but here we've got virgins, 5 of them are wise, and 5 virgins that are foolish. They that were foolish took their lamps and took no oil with them. I wonder what that's implying. But the wise took oil in their vessels and their lamps. While the bridegroom tarried, they all slumbered and slept. And at midnight there was a cry made, behold. This is kind of like talking about when he returns. While the bridegroom tarried, they all slumbered and slept. That's kind of what's been happening the last 2 millennial days, the last 2,000 years. And at midnight there was a cry made, behold, the bridegroom cometh. Go ye out to meet him. Then all those virgins arose and trimmed their lamps. And the foolish said unto the wise, give us your oil, for our lamps are gone out. But the wise answered, saying, not so, lest there not be enough for us and you. But go ye rather to them that sell, and buy for yourselves. And while they went to buy, the bridegroom came, and they that were ready went in with him to the marriage, and the door was shut. Afterward came also the other virgins, saying, Lord, Lord, open to us. But he answered and said, verily I say unto you, I know you not. You weren't ready. You got to be ready for his return. Are you keeping his law now? Watch therefore, you neither knoweth the day nor the hour wherein the Son of Man cometh. Now, that I can explain, but I'm not going to do that here. Okay. Let's see, one more, Luke. I think this was the same. And why do ye call me Lord, Lord, and do not the things which I say? Whosoever cometh to me and heareth my sayings and doeth them, I will show you to whom he is like. He is like a man which built a house and digged deep and laid the foundation on rock. And when the flood rose, the stream beat vehemently upon that house and could not shake it, for it was founded upon a rock. But he that heareth and doeth not, he that heareth and doeth not, is like a man that without a foundation built a house upon the earth, against which the stream did vehemently, and immediately it fell, and the ruin of that house was great. There's going to be a lot of people ruined when this comes about soon, because they're not striving to be righteous right hands, nor have they, come out in a way that's lawful and righteous according to the Torah, and they're not keeping this. They're not doing what Yahuwah told them to do, to be faithful, wise virgins. Some have come over here, but they're being foolish virgins. These are the wedding guests. Look at the parables about the wedding guests. Some wedding guests don't even respond to the invite. Some wedding guests show up and try to sit up front where they think they're important, and then they're told to sit in the back. Some show up and they're not dressed properly. What's that mean? And they're told to leave. Oh, Lucy, you've got a lot of splaining to do. So, I chastise people. I'm kind of harsh. I know I sound harsh. You don't have a lot of time. It's too late for most of you to do this. It's not too late for you to do this. This is what you need to be focusing on. And if you need help understanding what you got to do, write a comment. Ask. Knock, and the door shall be opened. Ask, and ye shall receive. I will do my best. I hope this helps. Take care. Have a great summer. Bye.